As we've already heard, or I think we have anyway, the two people most responsible for the WPA arts projects were Harry Hopkins and Eleanor Roosevelt. And we haven't heard too much about Eleanor, so I'm going to tell a couple of stories about her and her involvement with the Federal Theater Project. Hopkins, of course, said artists have to eat too, as Nick has told us. He also said another thing which I really love. He said that the WPA theory is that human talent should be preserved and that those who possess it add materially to the wealth of the nation. Hopkins chose Hallie Flanagan to head the Federal Theater Project. She was about 5 feet tall, maybe 4'11". She had kind of curly red hair, and she was very forceful, out of all proportion to her size. She'd grown up and gone to school in Grinnell, Iowa with Harry Hopkins. That's how they knew each other. But she was not the easiest or the most obvious choice to head the Federal Theater Project. She was a cutting-edge, avant-garde, left-leaning theater director right near here at Vassar College. She was an academic, not a pro, and some equity actors and pros looked down on that and thought it should have been someone like Eva Le Gallienne. In fact, Eva Le Gallienne herself looked down on it and said that why should we have bad food when we can have quality food? That was her description of the whole WPA theater project. So it was an uphill battle for Hallie with the actors' equity. And it was also an uphill battle with the unions, the theater unions in the big cities. They were skeptical. And in New York City, Hallie Flanagan had to meet with 15 different union chiefs and convince them that they should allow their workers to go to work for $23 a week. Fortunately, Hallie Flanagan said that one of her great advantages in the job was, I like stagehands, and stagehands like me. Right at the beginning, it looked like the arts projects might not survive because of politics. Hopkins' capable deputy was Jake Baker, and he insisted in the beginning that the top jobs be cleared with Congress. That, of course, meant patronage and mediocrity. Baker thought that art should be treated, in the beginning, he thought that art should be treated like highways, and that it was fine to have state control. But if you had state control of the arts projects, that resulted in really timid, unadventurous art. Because you had local people, you had all kinds of favoritism, etc. You can imagine. So Hallie, in her frustration, decided it was time to enlist the support of Eleanor Roosevelt, who had been a friend of the arts projects from the beginning and was a friend of Hallie's as well. Didn't know her well, but they liked and admired each other. So Hallie, on September 22nd, 1935, went over from her home in Poughkeepsie to Valkill to visit Eleanor. And she told Eleanor the situation, that Baker wanted all of the top jobs in the arts projects to be cleared with members of Congress. And Eleanor, in turn, talked to Harry Hopkins. And 3 days later, Hopkins got the message. 3 days later, he called Baker and his assistant McClure into his office in D.C. Hallie Flanagan was present. And she wrote afterwards, she said, I really felt sorry for McClure and Baker before Hopkins got through with them because he ripped them up and down, saying this was always an exceptional project and must be considered as such. He also said, do you or do you not trust the judgment of these 4 people, meaning the 4 arts directors? When they tried to explain that procedures were not in place, Hopkins responded, you know damn well that we don't need procedure. We need money in the bank at one end of the telephone wire and a federal theater or music or art director at the other. That was Hopkins.